who is standing up and speaking to you, right? Okay. So this next part, hopefully, I will still have friends in here, but my experience with my lifestyle, one reason I was able to learn this language was because I was able to spend a hell of a lot of time studying, right? I was with a group who were academically unprepared to learn this language. Egyptian hieroglyphics, as it's called by white folks, they don't let their people learn it. You have to have an advanced degree and almost chosen to get into a school so that you can become an Egyptologist to learn this language. Right? So, me and my group, we studied this language for 10 years with Dr. Theophilo Benga, one of the world's most greatest intellects, and Dr. Gye-Nyame, who is a language genius. She teaches and speaks Japanese, Chinese, Hebrew, and the Meta-Netia, right? Obenga, he's a specialist in ancient languages. So all ancient languages, Obenga speaks Greek, Hebrew, the Semitic language, the cuneiform, and of course the Meta-Netia. Now, so we studied with these individuals, right? We studied for 10 years. We met twice a week. We met on Monday, we met on Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? Now, on Tuesdays, we started studying because everybody worked. So we was like, well, what time can we study? We studied from 11 o'clock at night until 1 in the morning. Then we said that wasn't long enough. We went and we studied from 11 o'clock at night until 6 in the morning. Then on Thursdays, we studied from 11 o'clock in the morning until 3. Right? We did this every week for 10 years. People who knew us, they thought we were nuts. Because, you know, black people, you start something and 5 minutes later you through, right? Now, why were we able to spend these amount of hours of doing this, right? Because I was a medical marijuana distributor before it was called medical marijuana. It was still, now,
welcome aboard.
Let me say this, before the Europeans called it that. Because, see, we call it the Kali weed, the healing of the nation. We understood that, like, one of our problems as revolutionaries is that you give all of our time and creativity to white folks. So, when I wasn't in school, which I hated, I read, I have read every black scholar there is. If he was an African Center scholar, not only did I read them, I met them, right? With the money that we made, that's why we were able to hire Obenga. We paid Theophilo Benga a tremendous amount of money. That was one reason he hung with us, because he know that, like, when he came to Detroit, he was going to leave with his pockets full of money.
That's
right? But we didn't do this selfishly. We took our money and we invested into the black community so that Obenga, we brought in scholars from the African continent because we had houses that we bought. So we could put these scholars and people, when they came, we could house them so that they didn't have to put their money in hotels, right? They had personal houses that they could go to. When we studied Yoruba, we brought a Yoruba priest to Detroit and we housed him there. He was there for, off and on for years, right? But this is the type of education that we don't give our kids. We tell our kids, go to school. For what? We found out that, like, listen, you can do more with your money if you're independent thinking. So that one of the problems now, with that said, what eventually happened, studying this language saved my life. Two of our groups, two members of our group got busted by the feds, right?
Yeah, the big boys.
So one of my partners spent 17 years. He just got out of jail. He spent 17 years, and he's one of the most brilliant Medu Neter scholars there is. When he was in the pen, he taught Medu Neter. For myself, when I got busted, interesting. Put your money in books. The feds searched every door, every drawer in my house. Turned it out. They didn't touch one book. Now, my house is like a library because I put my money in books. You know, I bought books. If I put my money in the books, I would still have it because they took all of my money. But I'm sitting there, look at them, and I say they're like, how you walk into a house full of books?
And not touch.
I mean, my house is like a library. Books everywhere. They didn't touch one book.
Not one.
Kitchen drawers, every drawer, cabinets, everything turned out, turned over, looking for contraband. Not one book. So they don't even associate us with knowledge, So they asked me, they said, listen, young man, we don't have evidence of you filing income taxes for over 30 years. I supported myself for 30 years without filing income taxes. And so I was lucky. I won't go into the details, but the feds didn't have a case against me, right? But, listen, I don't have any type of work history. I haven't worked since I was a teenager, officially, right? So this is how this language saved my life. By this point, I studied the language and have produced some books so that once the feds retired me off the streets, I taught Medu Neter in African Center schools in Detroit for the next 7 years.
I like that.
So this language, when folks ask me, what can you do? It's up to you. The language itself is a tool, but it's a magical tool if you take the time to use it correctly. So, I repeat, Medu Neter has, it's my life.
Thank you.
So that's some of the background. I think some of the ASCAC folks really didn't know. To add a note to that, my first instructors of Medu Neter, he met with us one day. We had a big group in Detroit. Yeah. There were over 50 people studying this language. Mai said that he had rumors that he was associating with drug dealers in Detroit. So he told the three of us, well, actually 4 of us, that he could no longer have us as students. When Obenga came to Detroit, people from around the country met with him and told him, do not hang out with them guys in Detroit. You will get in trouble. He told us that, afterwards, he said that, folks tried to warn me not to associate. He said, I'm happy I didn't listen. He said, other folks, they talk about Obenga. They have Obenga here, Obenga speak. He said, you guys, when I come to Detroit, you pay me and all we do is study. He said, I've never met anybody. He said, you guys don't even eat. Because we were into Yoruba and Akan studies at the same time. So we were going through these fasting rituals in Akan. So we had Obenga in, and of course we wasn't eating. We forgot. So he was upset. He like, listen, we've been studying Medu Neter since 9 o'clock. It's 3 o'clock. He said, you haven't fed me. We was like, oh, wow, we forgot, So this, learning this language has been an adventure. It's been a life adventure, and we have to find ways for our youngsters, because there are a lot of youth like me who hate school. I hated school with a passion, but I love learning. So what do you do with a child like that? My parents didn't know what to do with me. What saved me was Malcolm X, because Malcolm, reading him, I was taught that, like, hold up. Simply because you're not in school don't mean that you don't educate yourself. So, Malcolm X and scholars like that is who we have to show our youth so that they have some direction. Because what? We tell them what? Go to school for what? To get a job. Right. To be a flunky for white people. No. Our jobs prevent us from being intellectual revolutionaries. You know, so like this is something that we ought to strive for.
I have a question from the internet. Brother Junior asks, Elder, do you think the Euro, or as I call them, the West Asians, and the rest of the world will ever return Egypt or Kemetic African artifacts back to the motherland?
Why should they?
No.
Why should they?
Yeah. Brother Junior, he said, why should they? He watching you right now, live.
Why should they? Because see, you are right. You putting it on them. And if you expect for them to do anything for you, then you are mistaken.
Right, you gotta take it.
Right. So this is being streamed. You didn't tell me that.
Yeah. Well, I was going to watch your back here.
No, I know. It's fine. It's fine. I just didn't know, you know. But it's fine, you know. All of this is on the public record, as they say. Yeah, but okay. The problem is not what they gonna do. The problem is what we gonna do.
Exactly.
And the problem is what we are not doing. You know, so that like I don't want anything from them. I have no demands on the European. My demands is on us. When we get our stuff straight, the Europeans will be straight because they will have to get in line. We're the majority. If we get our hair straight, they'll have to get in line. So my demands is on us. It's what we have to do. You know, because, hey, look, there should be no misunderstanding about the Europeans. These are questions we have to stop asking. What they going to do and what all of this stuff. We know what they're going to do. They have been consistent. Our problem is with us. Until we realize that our problem is with these nigger factories. They produce niggers. And until we can shut them down and, you know, put some information into our children that doesn't make them dependent upon white people. Because right now, everything we do is depending upon them. I find it interesting that the rapper Jay-Z, right? So he was negotiating with the NFL. And apparently he was, because I don't know, I can only say apparently this young man, he might know, you know, more exact. But apparently he told the youth that they should cut their hair, cut the braids, and cut them dreads so you could get a job. And see, that's the type of subservient attitude that's, you know, that's like pushed on us that we don't challenge. It seems like that's a good idea because we get most of our understanding from stuff from white people. We listen to the news, and okay, I find it interesting that this whole Trump thing, right? Nobody's looking at it from our perspective. Even the black folks on TV is looking at it from a white folks' perspective. Nobody is saying this dude is a racist. Well, excuse me. He is the overt racist because all of them are racist. But he's the overt racist. You know, they won't say that. They come up with all this crazy. He's a liar. You know, all this. Look, but nobody is calling it from our perspective. Everybody is talking about the world, talking about this situation from a white person's perspective. Hell, you know why? Because we're educated to be white. These nigger factories they're nigger factories because they teach you to be subservient to white. So that I had a handout. You had a handout? So I have a handout. Could you read that handout?
It's in here?
No. I'm from yesterday. The questionnaire.
Oh, the questionnaire from
right.
yesterday. Okay. Right here.
So that information about, is that right? The Jay-Z?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay. That's a good thing.
They're putting a bunch of stuff out about Jay-Z, supposedly said.
A lot of people got them.
Okay.
You got one.
This says,
Oh, you gave it back to me? Yeah.
list any scientific accomplishments that you know of that were attributed to or began in Africa. Okay, and somebody put all major scientific investigations like time, space, and infinity began in Africa. But the second part was, where did you learn or how did you attain this information? They left that blank.
You want me to fill it in now?
Yeah, that's the whole point. It's a questionnaire. Because my point is this. Most of the information, or I should say all the information you get from the academy and from the West is going to be negative in terms of Africa and black people.
125th Street.
So that if you come across any positive information, you probably didn't get that information from any type, from educational source. So when I went back to school, I found it interesting because they have made it such that racism is not even a subject in school anymore. When they talk about it, they talk about it in a manner that's so benign until people don't even see it as evil because it's taught by white people. So I found it interesting. I took a class called Environmental Science, and they talked about the third world. They even had a formula that they say that this formula is how a third world nation can rise out of third world status. And you know, that's a lie. There's no such thing. You know.
Definitely.
Now, but I found it interesting that the class, the Berlin Conference, was never mentioned.
Woo.
They never said, in the class, they never detailed how the Europeans got together, what, in 1777 or something like that. They got together and divided up the African continent like a cake. Now, this was after they had gone back into the African continent. Africa had been weakened by slavery. The Europeans, after conquering the continent, went back into Africa 100 years later, and then they divided up the spoils because after the slave trade, the African continent was, it was no longer unified in any way. So they could just go in without the under mass opposition that they had faced during slavery, during the enslavement period. And that's something else that we need to have more understanding of. Because our understanding of our enslavement comes from Europeans, we really have no understanding of it. Every black child should read the slave narratives. How do we have slavery in the U.S. lasted hundreds of years. There are massive records of it. And we don't demand that our children read the slave narratives. That means you don't understand your history. So I find it interesting, once again, it comes back to food, right? So we're all into nutrition and nutritional value. Have any of you ever checked out what the enslaved Africans ate? Well, then you know that nutrition is a myth. It's a myth. Read Frederick Douglass. He will tell you that, like, listen, they got what, like a pound of fish for a month. That's what it had to last you. You know, he tells you and also when you read the slave narratives, there is a common theme. The people was always hungry.
Always hungry.
Read all of it. That was their main thing. We were hungry. They don't feed us. Now, so they made these people work to death and didn't feed them. But what about all this nutrition? Now we're worried about nutrition. Okay, that's lower nutritional value. You shouldn't be eating that. And see, this whole nutrition thing, listen, if nutrition was that important, you would be born with a calculator, not taste buds. But we don't look at that. So white people tell us that, okay, you got to notice the nutritional value of things. So they got us going around looking at packages and examining. Hey, look, you got to realize these people are not concerned with health. They're concerned with making money. So they put these labels on packages, not for health concerns, to convince the buyer that this is what you should buy. So why don't we, but we don't analyze our society like that. No black person. Matter of fact, we have, what's the other, IT, not IT. What's See, I don't know these folks' names. But anyway, he comes on the commercial talking about the internet and, you know, what it's the finest. And it's like that, hold up. We know that facial recognition is biased because it's invented by white folks. That means that the internet is also biased because it's invented by white folks. So instead of promoting all this technology for folks, especially black people, they should be trying to make us aware that, like, they use this technology against us, and we are just lapping it up like it's a good thing. One of my last points. Okay. DNA, right? They tell people, give me your DNA and I will tell you where you come from. Nah, but they don't tell you that. They banking this DNA.
Banking it.
And it's going to be, they're going to make big money because DNA is the next big thing for a whole lot of stuff that they're doing. Well, they telling you that, okay, but your DNA is safe with us. We're not going to use it. You believe that because they say it? On top of that, right? They have sold us something that they cannot prove. There's no way that they can prove that the DNA ancestor of this body is you. In any way. They can't prove that. Now think about what I'm saying, because this is something that people really don't get or think about. There's no way that they can prove, because of course the DNA is the protein, the protein of your body, the physical makeup of your body. That ain't you, it's your body. So there's no way that they can prove. Now, the body definitely had a DNA ancestor, but they can't prove that the consciousness was me that was connected to the DNA ancestor. Because if that's the case, they're saying that you are tied to one body and one consciousness all throughout eternity. That don't make no damn sense. It can't, it can't be. Just think about that. It cannot be. Reality can't work like that. So, but once again, nobody has sat down and questioned that. We just lap it up like it's real. Well, they say that I come from, Central Africa. Your body comes from there. Your consciousness comes from the universe. Your consciousness is everywhere, it's everything. So that as a consciousness, you probably have to go through every species there is in terms of evolutionary, right? Well, that means that I can't have one body. It's totally impossible. But that's because we have been taught that there's one body. We have been taught that there's one God, one world, one is reality, and all that stuff is nonsense. What they call the universe, scientists even now are starting to call it the multiverse. Because there's no one like they think of it. The oneness is in everything is of the same stuff. That's the oneness. But outside of that, it's diversity. So those are some of the things I like to, put into your brain, hopefully help you to think about. Some of these ideas are things that we need so that we can get in between the Europeans' ideas. Because right now they have us mentally enslaved, and we don't see the critique of their worldview in the public. So that, we used to have it all the time because we had black nationalists who were experts at getting at our intellectual enslavement. But we have pretty much let that information slide by. So hopefully this short talk and introduction to myself has helped to enlighten some of y'all about some of the things we should do and some of the things that we can do.
One of the things, you and Quan, a lot of people know, that I tutor as my second half of my life. And recently I had an experience, and what you were talking about made me think about it. With a young man I've been working with since the summer. We work on reading and math and a whole bunch of different stuff. But during the Black History time, he was reading a really good article on Emmett Till.
Emmett Till, yeah.
Yes. And he's only eighth grade, so he's 13-ish. And he was reading it.
Whoa.
It just pierced him.
Yeah.
I could tell by, he said, I said, had you heard of him before? He said, yeah, sort of. My mom had said something. He said, but he may not have even been whistling at that girl.
Exactly.
So we talked. I said, how at 13 you talk to your friends and you make things bigger than they really are? I said, that could have been a conversation he was having. And he said, when they brought his body back, I said, yeah, his mom let the cat, because she wanted people to see what had happened to her. And he said, do you think that kind of stuff? I said, yes. Those things still happen.
Right. That's
still exist. It's my responsibility and yours and your mom and dad to try and prepare you to deal with some of these things. So what I try and do with him now is pick books and stories for him to read that enlighten. And slave narratives I had not thought about. But I think he's old enough to appreciate them. So right now we're focusing on what he has to read for school.
Yeah.
So we'll get to the point where I can pick something for him to read.
It's interesting that, so now we have this whole thing of the so-called Me Too movement, right? And I find it's very interesting because once again, it shows the problem of us not knowing our history. The Me Too movement is founded on the fact that some white women were abused, right? Well, hell, black women during enslavement had no control over their body whatsoever. And we have lost those stories. We have lost the stories of how they used to bring white boys to black women to be broken in.
Come on.
I mean, as a regular, practice. So, we have been sexual tools and slaves. And another thing that's been overlooked about enslavement. Enslavement was also sexual enslavement on both genders.
Right.
And we have just ignored that. We see how these folks are sexually. But we let them slide during slavery, so we don't even understand the sexual abuse, especially experienced by our women. So that we have a whole movement where they just push aside. We have black women too, who push aside their own historical experiences and adapt those of white women and support this whole, Me Too movement. The sister's not here too. One of the most clearest voices of women who speak against this is, Valethia Watkins. Now, she was one of the students of Dr. Right, exactly. She's one of the clearest women on this. And she calls feminism white supremacy and drag. That's the best. I mean, that's the best definition for feminism. Now, in school, I used to piss off people. I mean, because I would tell them because see, feminism in schools, it accepted. It's the new, if you are feminist or you support feminist philosophy, that makes you a progressive thinker. I used to tell them, nope. Feminism is white supremacy in a dress. And because they had never heard that before, it would stop them cold. Because they were like, damn, I never thought about that. Now, some of the white women tried to, of course, affront that, right? But if you know your history, they can't. All you have to do, examine the history of some of the early women who formed some clubs. During the 1900s, black people were reading, and they had reading clubs, especially black women. black women were some of the leaders in this area, right? So Josephine St. Marie Ruffin was one. And read about her experiences with the white women. And you're going to find that like all of them, what's it?
Sojourner?
No, I was trying to think of the white woman movement's leader of that time. Stanton, the glorious, was it?
Steiner.
No, Steiner she's a new one. But this was one of Stanton, Elizabeth Stanton. She was one of the white founders of the women's movement. And her, and there's another one. Oh, Susan B. Anthony. Read about them. Listen, they got into an argument and debate with the black women, especially with Ida B. Wells. Because they told her that, like, listen, you're too concerned with the men of your race. And so they told all the white women, we stand with our men. Now you will find that feminists, they stand with white women. Because they don't know this history. So in school, the sisters in the class didn't know this history. So what I found in school, our children go to school at such an intellectual disadvantage until they sit in school feeling stupid. They don't know how to challenge the instructor. So I noticed that a lot of times in school, when the professor said something, they would look over at me. Because they know he's going to have something to say about that. And they was right. I always did. Always did. But I repeat, we send our kids to school without the intellectual, emotional support that they need. And it's simple. Before they go to school, give them Malcolm X to read. They be straight. That one book would have their brain straight. Because in there, he has enough in it to make you suspicious of white people and their intentions. And that's what you need. There was somebody that not here, but they was when we were at the dinner, they were saying that they taught their children to question everything, including themselves, Kimber. And I told them that, like, well, that's a little far. You question everybody, but not me and your dad and your mama. Those are the two people you don't question. Everybody else, you question. I don't care what they say, you question them. That's a healthy thing to do, especially in this society. You should definitely tell your children to be skeptical and question everybody. Yes.
Two things. One, the slave narratives are now on Google Music, where you can listen to the actual recordings.
Okay. Now, those are those might be different. They went back. They did those recordings separately and at a different time. Okay. If they're the same thing, they have a lot of white scholars went back and they recorded black people who had been enslaved. And what they found was that some of those black people didn't tell those white people the real story because they were still apprehensive. They still were smart enough to be apprehensive of white folks. Right. So even though they came with, NPR money and, all of this stuff, they still were skeptical because they understood that, like, hold up, we don't know how this information will be used.
So could you give titles? So we can start doing it. And then also, I got another question because I got to go out here.
Okay.
Sister Regina, she says, peace. I'm looking for a Kemetic word concept for philanthropy. That's a Greek word, but I believe the concept is ours. So I love to find a more original nomenclature for the term of philanthropy.
This is
something close that you can give.
No, and this is why.
Uh-oh.
We have to stop looking for European ideas into our culture. What she has to do is research and do some history and find out the practice and not the name of the practice, and find out what the practice was. Right. One problem we have in terms of understanding words, and I'm going to try, I think I'm going to deal with some of this in my lecture, is that we look for the meaning of words. That doesn't work. And the example I used yesterday is the perfect example. Regardless of what democracy means, it means very little. What you have to, in order to understand democracy, you can't understand its meaning. You can't understand its meaning. You have to understand how democracy functions. So in terms of words, it's more important that you understand how a word functions and how that word is represented in nature rather than what the word means. Because I repeat, you can go to a dictionary and look up democracy all day, and you will not find a meaning that actually fits how democracy functions. Because democracy functions as a tool of white supremacy. But you don't find it as part of the definition of democracy. But democracy was invented and used by these white people as a tool of domination and control. So unless you have that definition with democracy, the definition of it in the book will not fit. So that's a problem that we have to understand, that that Europeans use words in a particular manner. Regardless of what the word means, it will function to promote their worldview and their attitudes towards everybody else.
Not on words, but because I stepped out of there. One of the things I found that was helpful for me, that I don't think occurs too much anymore, is conversation as a family.
Yeah.
When I grew up, and I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, we all had to eat together at night, no matter what. You had to eat together. And the adults talked about white people like dogs in no uncertain terms.
Yeah.
They let you know, like a couple of my aunts were maids in their homes, and they would talk about the white people didn't have the money, they might give you food, or give you clothes as payment. Just all kinds of things. They made you know. So by the time you got out there, you had the feeling that you were always suspect and always looking at them with a jaundiced eye. Whereas I don't know if our children view them.
No,
from that
they don't, because they have come up with the concept of reverse racism.
Yeah, I've been told that by young people.
And it's like,
racist?
Well, now think about it, right? Think about it. If racism is bad, reverse racism has to be good. But they use tricky language. They're gonna tell you, well, you a reverse racist. Well, that's good. If racism is bad, reverse racism, just by the nature of word uses, means it has to be good.
We try to no, not me.
But we no, I'm not.
No.
Not me.
Yeah.
But once again, we don't. White people have made us so that we don't think in our own right. We don't think
that's not
to
the first
benefit ourselves.
Because they did it in the '60s, and Malcolm pointed that out.
Exactly.
So it only goes to show what they use once that don't work, they go back to it later on.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But they will use something. That's the point. They always got a game going on.
Oh, okay. Always got a game.
So now it's just like they are fair, and racism is something that was made up by other sick white people, and we have some good white people who are not racist now. So that's the myth now. Well, I guess if we don't have any more questions or comments, that's it for this session.
Well, a quick comment is that I know one of the more difficult problems that Elder Alona and I face in trying to come to understand the language is that because we've been immersed in this Western culture, that there's a lot of ideas that we bring from the Western culture and try to impose upon the Meta Nature And that goes back to what, addressing what the question that Sister Regina was asking.
Excellent.
Right.
So part of it is, again, make sure, and several of our scholars, remind us of this, but we really, when we're having a conversation, we must be clear on what the context is.
Yes.
Because that will help you to determine what the meaning of the word is. Not because you've gone to Webster or any of the other ones, but the context in which you find the word and how it's being used will give you all the information you need to understand it from the African perspective.
Yeah. One last thing. So please, from here on out, do not use the term civil rights movement. This is one of the most evilest terms they have given us because they label a whole generation wrongly. Black nationalism and black consciousness were the thought forms, the social constructs that moved the youth. It was not civil rights. So by them labeling the whole 60s as the civil rights movement, you miss out on the intellectual power of black power. Black power scared white people to death. That term made them shit their pants. You will find that white people will be nice to you and think that they like you, but the moment that you call yourself a black nationalist, it's like a response happens that they cannot control, and they will see you as the enemy. Because they know that, he see me as the enemy. So their response, look at Trump. Everything Trump calls somebody else is him. This is how they do. He's just showing you the sickness, in a prime way. But this is what they do. So the minute you call yourself a black nationalist, they're going to say, oh, shit. He see me as the enemy. And they're going to see you that way. Now, they already see that way, but then they know that you're conscious. You're trouble. But when you get up and start talking about integration and civil rights, they know they got you. Because you're going to focus on philosophers who don't empower you. You're going to focus on philosophers who give you information that make you subservient intellectually and emotionally to white people. So I repeat, we need to bring black nationalism and the idea of black power back. So when we talk about the 60s, we should call it the Black Consciousness Movement, the Black Consciousness Time, or black power or black nationalism. But we got to throw out the civil rights. Malcolm said it best. We're not in a civil rights situation. Our problem is human rights. We're not even looked at as human. Oh, one thing I'm going to show the next group. So there's a video during one of the Super Bowls where they highlight the Declaration of Independence. And they went through and they read it. And they had all these NFL superstars, Jim Brown and, all of them, talking about the Declaration of Independence and how it says all men are created equal. Yeah, right. They weren't talking about you because they didn't see you as human.
So again, context is everything.
Right, context is everything. So they've been talking about, the Declaration of Independence. All of the majority of the signers of Declaration of Independence were slaveholders.
Oh, come on now.
So that when they talk about all men are created equal, they're true because they don't see you as being human.
That's right. They ain't talking about that.
So they're like, why? This is a type of mindset that we have to instill in our youth so that they don't let these word games just make them totally subservient to white people.
That's right. That's on page.
So this time I am ending it. I think.
So my answer was the bookstore on the corner of 125th Street and 7th Avenue. I used to go there. The thing that was with the pictures that were out front, and then
In New York?
Yeah, in Harlem.
That's, was that?
Or if Yankee knows the name of it.
Yeah, I was trying, right.
The man, Oscar.
The bookstore?
On 125th Street and 7th Avenue. The one when they pictured Malcolm in front of him speaking. You know,
the Tree of Life?
Right.
Wasn't it the Tree of Life?
I was young. All I know is I went by there.
Everybody used to go back.
I stopped in there, and he talked with me. And before I went overseas, like the experience you had, I had pretty much the same experience. When I went, I had enough something to know. I went in there, and he gave me a whole series of books to read and the order in which to read them in.
Okay.
And well, he didn't give me. I bought them. You know, like I used my money for the books too. And he gave me the process in which to read them. So I got in trouble in the service for, being a reverse racist or whatever you want to call it. So,
I had the same trouble.
But it was 125th Street
same problem.
and 7th Avenue. That's gone now. That bookstore is pretty much gone. So you tell me all the time what the name of the man was all the time.
Yeah, but I've lost some memory since then.
Oh, trust me, I know that feeling.
I know what bookstore you're talking
All
about.
I remember is Chuck Full of Nuts, the Lowe's Theater, and what's your name's church on the other side, Adam Clayton Powell Senior's Church, and the bookstore. Those are the four corners, like.
Okay.
So I know what you mean. Thank you. That was and my thing was the drum. For some reason, I went to that and started doing that, and I had to leave school too. You know, so it's really like. And doing the other thing too. My route was between Harlem and D.C. So,
A route of what?
How do you call that? You termed it in such an elegant way. I forgot it. A dispenser.
Medical marijuana.
Yeah.
Provider. Distributor.
Yeah. I mean, it was such a nice way that you put it.
Yeah, I gotta say that's another thing too. You know, so my friend was in the midst of doing his bit when it became legal, and that's so interesting because the only thing that changed that made it legal was the wording.
Right.
Nothing else changed. They just changed the wording. But see, once again, it shows you how powerful words are.
That's right.
Nothing changed. They just changed the wording. Now, something did change. Now, white people control the business.
Oh, thank you.
Right.
In Detroit,
same thing with the numbers.
Some of the biggest distributors were black people. That has changed.
That has changed.
Because one thing was that when it became legal. Now, in Detroit, it's interesting. They have laws in Detroit so that if you have a conviction, you get a discount on your license.
I'm sorry, say that again.
If you have a marijuana felony conviction, they will still let you get a license. In fact, they will give you a discount on your license because they know that this shit don't make no sense. We got people been locked up for 50 years. Now we got people out here who's doing it for free. Right. Doing the exact same thing. Nothing changed, right? So there's so much so that they went in and tried to recruit some of us. They said, okay, we want people who got skills in being a distributor.
Oh, yeah.
And you can come in and get a business going.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You got to be skeptical. Be leery of these folks. It's something that so what's starting to happen is this. People realize that you have to do both. You become legal and you still be illegal. Why? Because the legal, they put so much taxes on this stuff until it's going to be too expensive. So the people are saying, they're like, hold up. Why should I go to the store when I got my friend? So my friend, I get a discount plus I come in and sit a while. So they got, this thing is like, We just let white people do anything to us. So they got this whole industry going for their benefit.
Right.
You know, because it's not for ours; it's for their benefit.
That's why it's legal and illegal.
Yeah, right.
Because they signed it. Oh, well, let's bring in the other guys that can say it's illegal, so you're not playing ball.
Yeah.
But it's interesting.
They're going to do the same thing with prostitution, too.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they haven't.
They have.
Depends where you are.
What's the correct pronunciation of your name?
It's pronounced Bonotchi.
Bonotchi.
Right.
Thank you. And welcome once again. Glad you're here. Enjoyed it. I'm going to every word that you've spoken.
And thank you for last night. That drink was excellent.
Right on. Don't have a question. Well, part of a question and observation. I'd say roughly about 4 or 5 years ago, I participated in a march for Black Lives Matter here in Columbus, Ohio. And much to my surprise and chagrin, the white to black ratio of people participating in the march was no less than 8 to 1. 8 white people to 1 black person.
Yep, I found the same thing with the Black Lives Matter movement in Detroit when I went to a rally, something that they were having. I was surprised about the amount of white women who was included in
That was my next one.
Right. Well, there is a couple of problems, right? First off, what kind of fool would have an organization called Black Lives Matter? They don't. Our miseducation allow us to say that. Black lives does not, and Black lives have never mattered in America for us. Black lives matter in America for abuse, right? I mean, even today, right? We don't own shit in our own neighborhoods. Other people use our neighborhood to make tons of money. Other people make money off us, but we don't. So, it's it's because of miseducation. The only reason we can have a movement called Black Lives Matter is because they've been so miseducated until they actually been fooled into thinking that black lives actually do matter. When anybody who look at our history would firmly know and understand black life don't mean shit in America. They throw your life away like candy. They just, black lives, that don't mean nothing. And, never have. But, once again, it's a problem of miseducation. I can't say this enough. And, it's not new. Carter G. Woodson, why have we let the valuable work of Carter G. Woodson just, it has evaporated, disappears. It's not even in people's minds anymore. This was a pivotal book. Every black school child should read this book because you're being miseducated. It's not even a concept anymore. I took a class in school on black family development. I dropped it because I was going to fail that class. It would have screwed up my grade point average. It was taught by a black professor. And of course, me and him, we went at it. I knew I had to drop this class. This idiot in class said that, because I questioned him about what he had said. He said that, the only way we would know if we would be better off being Africans if we went back and act like slavery never happened and see what the results was. I told him that didn't make no damn. That's what I said. I said, a professor. That doesn't make any sense.
This was a professor?
This was a professor in the class. I told you I dropped the class. Because this was the type, so this is a black professor pushing this type of nonsense. So his whole point was that, listen, we're not that bad off. And if you just be humble and get a good job, listen, The guy said he was a man of God.
There you go.
He's a Christian minister.
He knows his place.
He said he's a man of God. So that your focus should be on getting a good job.
That's right. And obeying.
Like appeasing white people. So, this is a black professor in a class called Black Family and Development. The class was geared to focus on the black psychologists, right? To teach them how to deal with the problems that the black family has. All of their solutions were be good, get a good job,
Sing a song.
and be good. That's throughout the whole book. Now, you could, of course, they didn't make it that simply, but you could boil it down that simply because all of their solutions involve you never overtly confronting racism.
That's right.
It was always you got to go to do this, do that, but never overtly challenging racism or racists. And I say, well, listen, this class is a waste of time. Yes.
Do you think anybody in that class before you left had an inkling of what you were saying to him?
Yeah,
And
most
so
definitely.
that planted that seed.
Oh yes, I stayed long enough. I
I
waited until the last hour to drop because I wanted to spend as much time in that class as I could. But I know there's no way that was a class I could not pass because the subject matter I was too in opposition. When you read something all the time and you're in opposition to everything that that you're reading, that's not a good thing. So I know that I would not remember the information to pass the test because the information it was not engaging. So I took a test, I got a D, and I said, "Oh, this is not going to work," because it wasn't. The test was not hard at all. It was easy, but you had to read and absorb the information
and change your.
And I couldn't do that.
That's right.
I was in too much opposition. So I never fully engaged in this class, which was a good thing. The professor, I think, was happy, that last day when I didn't show up, he knew, he dropped the class because this is the last day. He won't be back. Now, interesting, I was in junior college. This was a long time ago. And I was in a philosophy class. And the professor asked this question. I forgot it. Well, anyway, the answer was he was trying to make the assumption that you couldn't prove things, right? And I told him that there was one thing I could prove, and that was that I exist. Now I told him I don't know about. I take it for granted that you do because I'm talking with you. But I say I know I exist, right? And he wanted to argue that, but you can't argue that. You can argue that to yourself, to someone else, to yourself, but you can't argue that someone else doesn't exist. You can say that about yourself, right? So I told him, I don't know about you, but I know I do, right? And he had to admit the same thing. Oh, I know. He knew that as a person he exists. And so he told me after a few weeks, he said that I'll give you a B if you never come back to this class. Because, of course, I had read Stolen Legacy by George Jim James and stuff. And so I was not fitting in that class. He did not like me. Because every time he mentioned something about Greek, I had read enough so that I could at least question him. I didn't know enough to be oppositional, but I could at least question him at that point, and he couldn't answer those questions because, of course, he didn't know nothing about Africa or Egypt, so that was over his head.
Brother Bonotchi, I was abroad in Switzerland, Geneva, and I was walking down the street. There, main drag, one of the main drags.
Well, I thought you said in drag. I'm just joking with you. Everybody know. My students know I have a sense of humor.
Is that what you call it? Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Nothing ever close to interest. Ever.
I apologize.
Just so we're clear.
Yeah.
Just so we're clear. I'm clear.
One of the main bookstores there. I was walking by, and I just, happened to catch out of my periphery a copy of Malcolm X, the biography of Malcolm X. And I stopped, looked closer into the window, and I seen a copy of Eldridge Cleaver's Soul on Ice.
So nice.
And I looked, and this is in the storefront windows.
Mm-hmm.
They had Fred Jackson's Soledad brother. And
Yeah, George Jackson.
George Jackson.
Yeah, right.
What's going on here?
In Sweden.
No, Switzerland.
Switzerland.
Yeah. So I stayed there for about 2 or 3 weeks, and I started talking to some of the Swiss people there, and I brought that up, and they said, "Oh yeah, we're very, very familiar with Malcolm X and Stokely Carmichael and whatnot in the Black Power movement." And it went on to name different events and things that happened. And then they questioned me by saying, what we really don't understand is, Black Americans have so much at their disposal
Yep.
in the way of liberties.
Yep.
Why is it that we don't make better use of it?
Yeah.
And I didn't have
Miseducation. That's it. But yeah, that's you're right. That's interesting.
So I'm just interested, how is it that they, some 7,000 miles away, have a revolutionary spirit about our cause more so than we do?
Check this out. A friend of mine had a sister who was dating an Iranian, right? This was about 10 years ago. No, longer than that. I was in school. I was in, so anyway. So he gave her some stamps to give to me. They were Malcolm X. Iran had stamps of Malcolm X before the U.S. had it. So I kept these for a long time. I eventually lost them. But yes, so Iran had stamps honoring Malcolm X, and it blew our minds because we didn't realize he was that international.
Did you see what they did in Turkey?
No.
They renamed the street that the American embassy is on.
No.
It's Malcolm X Boulevard.
Oh wow! Don't worry.
It's about 2-3 weeks ago.
Don't worry. Trump don't change that.
Oh, without a doubt.
Well, I'd like to offer a geometric perspective on how it is we can have so many things at our disposal and not know how to use them. So, if you imagine yourself that you are part of this floor, and all that you have access to, let's say you're this spot on the floor, right? And you see, you look that way, you see plenty of room. You look that way, you see plenty of room. All around you look, you see plenty of room. But somebody says, they draw a circle around you and said, you can't step outside that circle. And if you do everything in my power, because I have more at my disposal than you have at yours, I'm going to do to contain you within that circle. And after generation upon generation, now we'll go to Carter G. Woodson. What did he say? After you've been going to the back door for so long, if one ain't there, you'll go and cut one out just so you can walk through the back door.
That's right. That's where we're at. We're making our own back doors. They don't even have to do it for us anymore.
And that's not a backdoor in the good sense. We talk
Nope.
about the slave sense.
That's not a backdoor in the
Because
good
there was a time we used to make our own backdoors.
Yes.
So would you say their minds are freer than ours?
Undoubtedly. We are in a state of mental captivity, which also makes it physically, because mentality rules everything. Everything you do is based on some idea or concept that you have accepted as truth.
I remember when I was younger, we used to ride the bus, and back in the day, they used to make black people sit in the back of the bus.
Yes.
But it got to the point where they didn't have to make us. We went to the back of the bus.
Yes.
You got on the bus, all the black people was on the back of the bus. This was in the 80s.
Yeah, oh yes, right. Yeah. Same way for me, And I was growing up in Detroit, so we never really had official segregation like that, but people still knew that. We knew where your place was. Went to the back of the bus.
So if that is the case, conditioning having a large contribution towards being submissive, if you will, then what is a revolutionary or the sense of revolt born of?
What is it born of?
I mean, we're not the first group of people to be subjugated
Yeah.
throughout history by another culture.
Right.
And, I mean, someone stood up and said no at some point,
Yeah.
irrespective of there being a back door or not. Someone said no.
Right.
So what's it born of? And how do you tap into it?
Well, I mean, you don't. It's natural. It's unnatural not to fight back. So we have been so conditioned until we don't respond naturally. Right now, anybody in this room, if I walk up and hit you, I know what's going to happen. No question. Right?
You're Christian.
Huh? No, I said in this room.
Oh, I don't know. It might be.
No.
In this
If I can look in this room, I wouldn't.
You don't see one?
I don't see anybody in here I would approach like that. So I don't see no Christians in here like that. I don't see, if there are some Christians in here, they don't look that way.
I'm
so
Christian,
my point
but not
is
like
that my point is that
So don't
it's
push it.
natural. It's natural. So we have been so conditioned till we are doing things that are unnatural naturally. That's the best way I could put it. Because I repeat, nobody has to tell you how to respond when you're abused. You know how to respond. Kick their ass. Make them stop. That's it's that simple. So when you don't do that, you've been conditioned not to do it. And I repeat, that conditioning comes in school. That circle that Kwame was talking about, it's the nigger circle. As long as you are within the nigger circle, you can do anything you want to. Why? Because niggers are not a threat to white people. My statement is this. I say that, like, people like to say that computers is the white man's greatest invention. That's a lie. Niggers are the white man's greatest invention. Not technology, not computers. They're wrong. Niggers are the white man's greatest invention. When he invented niggers, he invented a term, idea, and a social condition to convert a whole group of people for white benefit. Now, for a time, we were climbing out of that condition. Now, we have made it such that our youth aspire and strive to feel that condition. They want to be a nigger. Even we've had what's the scholar's name? Eric Dyson. Eric Dyson says he's proof of what a nigger can be. What kind of, in other words, he's saying that, like, I'm showing you what you can do as being a product of white people. Well, that's a problem, because no sane people will accept the definition of who they are from their slave masters, and those that do this sick. I don't care what what degree you have, what you taught, if you accept the definition of yourself based on your slave master's definition of you, you're sick. So, Mr. Dyson, you got a problem because niggers are the white man's greatest invention because niggers are in self-check. So that means that Dyson, even with all this slick talk, if you examine his actions, he's going to be problematic because being a nigger, you're going to do some things that would be against black nationalists. So that niggers, I find it interesting that they be on the opposite end of black nationalists. So I would be more happy if he said, I'm proof for what black nationalists can do for a black man, but not I'm proof for what a nigger can be. He's saying that's saying that like whatever white people have given me, I have used it. I haven't invented it for myself. I did shit for myself, but what they have given me, I've taken. I did the best with it I could. So I'm a nigger, but I'm the best nigga you want to see. And that's it's like how is that type of thinking has become acceptable for us? This dude is what? He's a nationally radio program, and he's one of the most noted black intellectuals out there.
Who is this?
Dr. Eric Dyson. Right, Dr. Well, you share a name with him, but that's about all. Because he is this guy. Eric, right?
No, that's Keith.
Keith. I keep calling you Eric. I called you Eric yesterday. Those two names got stuck in my brain. Keith. I got it straight now. So if you was a student of mine, you would get one of my valued no prizes because I screwed up twice. It's with you today. I called you the wrong name, and then I made a joke about it. I made a joke on your comment. So in the classes I have, I give out no prizes. So Kwame has probably received more no prizes. Alona's not here. Kwame has probably received more no prizes out of their group. So, of course, because there's no prizes, you don't have any proof of it.
Oh, but I do.
He talks about them.
So you can also tell that I used to read comic books quite a lot because that's where the whole concept of a no prize come from. In the back of comic books, they would have you could send in questions, and the person who asked the best questions would always win a no prize. So I was proud when I was in a position that I could give out my own no prizes. That's one of the honors of a teacher.
Wow.
So some food is heating up over there. Is that a sign of future things to come?
Well,
Yeah, that's where Mama Longa.
Oh, okay.
perhaps you, not necessarily right now if you don't want, but share your concept with the family on functional symmetry.
Functional symmetry. Ma'at. Now, when we talk about Ma'at is the Kemetic worldview is based on Ma'at. Ma'at has been translated as truth, righteousness, and that type of thing, right? It doesn't quite do it though, right? So that what we call functional symmetry, everything that you know is in relation to something else, right? So that is the symmetry. Everything that you do is related or based on something else. Now, it's functional because it's based upon, or the results of it, the function of it is based on your feelings, emotions, and thoughts and behavior. So all those things serve to symmetrize symmetry. That's not what I want. Serves to align things, make things function so that, like, that's what I was saying. It's natural. If I walked up and hit somebody, you're gonna hit me back. That's functional symmetry. When you do something, there's gonna be an expected response, and that's what we have lost, because we have been taught that we live in a world that's out there. So the world that's out there, that means that I go out there, I do what I want to it, because it's out there. With functional symmetry, that means that, but hold up, it's out there, but I'm out there too. So when I push that, there's going to be, it's pressure, right? If you push something, it's pressure. That's functional symmetry. That means that my touching it has a response. Everything works like that. So in Kemet, the natures are based on functional symmetry. That's what they are. So that the Necharu are often defined as family members, right? That's because they're volatile. They do stuff. So that in order to explain relationship, they would use something that all of us understand, and that is your family. So Wasir is the father, Aset is the mother, and Haru is the son. Because they can use these dynamics to explain everything, because everything is happening functionally and interactively. So in Kemet, what they show you is that the reality works off the concept of what I like to call functional symmetry, which is ma'a. So that everything you do will have an effect on something else and yourself, and that something else is yourself. So the problem is that the European to see something else as the other. The other is you, but they see the other as not being associated with oneself. The other is you. So and you can see it. You can see it all the time. Once again, one of the best examples is Trump. Every time he says something about someone else, it's him. But once again, that's just an example. All of us do it. So a lot of times, especially in relationships, look at your mate and see how a lot of times you project out on your mate what you're doing or what you feel. But this is how everything works. We just haven't been taught, or I should say that the Europeans have made us think that it's me and then you. It's really just me in terms of you or me too. So if you look at it that way, then that me is not alone and oppositional, because me and you are the same thing. We just looking at it from different sides of the fence. So when I'm talking, I'm the subject, but when you're talking, you're the subject. So that means that we're both the subject, though. It's just that we are taking turns, so to speak. But see, in the European, you have one the subject and the other one is the object. And of course, the object is always less important. So see, you have a subject and object. In meta nature, you only have subject. There is no object, because everything is functional. So there is no object. Everything is subject. So that's what functional symmetry is. Well, that's one way to try to start to look at it and understand it. Did that suffice, everybody? Did you get that understanding? I know that can be kind of difficult to get to.
Let's just say it's worthy of diving into, because last time we tried to talk about this, Elder Alona was holding us up. So, if Elder Alona understands it, then, that allows opportunity for other folks too.
And she's not here now. Otherwise, you would have gotten a response, most definitely.
So in the language, I understand there are terms that are assigning a masculine quality and feminine quality.
Yes. Yeah. Because everything has a dual function, so to speak. So that even though I am male, I also have feminine aspects simply because nothing is alone by itself. So that even though I focus, and my focus is, as a male, you have to understand the feminine aspect of yourself also. Now, the problem in Western society is that we tie everything into sex. Right. So when someone hears that, they say, oh, they think it in terms of sexually. Right. And I'm not speaking of sexuality in no aspect of that term.
Just doing So that difference is where that line is, that we have to make that definite cross in order to understand things from an African-centered perspective.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you say male or female,
oh yes,
we all want the other Western thing in Sweden and Stockholm and them places.
Yes.
Norway, Germany, Britain. We're going there.
Yes. Everything is based on sex. The sexual act.
Right.
The performance of sex. Right. Right. Exactly. But
that's hard to be unprogrammed for a while.
Age tends to help that somewhat.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Because as a young man, that's something it's hard to get a hold on. Right? So it's interesting. I read a story about the indigenous people in Australia, and they were speaking of that in their initiation ceremonies, that there was certain information that they would not give a person until they got gray hair, because the gray hair was a sign that their nervous system had become is mature enough to accept the information and use it in a proper way. So I found that interesting. That's something that things like that we don't take into account. To us, you having gray hair is just a sign of old age. It doesn't mean anything about you being able to understand anything any better. It just means you're old. As a matter of fact, it tends to mean that you're infirm, that there's something wrong with you. But they were showing how that, like in those societies, there were certain emotional issues that you couldn't deal with until you got gray hair, because you didn't slow down enough to to comprehend them emotionally.
So since it got quiet, we want to take a restroom break before lunch. Cleve, show everybody what the restroom is. That was just the warm up.
Sure. Thank you. Okay, I can move my chair back.
Okay.
Hey.
What is it?
Doing that.
Oh, I'm doing. It's snowing outside. I love the snow.
You love the snow.
Yeah. Don't go there.
I love being indoors when it's
Okay,
snowing.
that's good. But remember, see, I was born on 125th Street in St. Nicholas Avenue during the snowstorm. So, love the snow. Yeah. Let's go sledding in Mount Morris Park. I don't know, they renamed all the parks and stuff now. I don't know what the name is now, but they didn't name them all.
All you do is just go snowing.
Yeah, let's go sledding there.
Snowing.
Yeah, snowing. Oh man, the best time was storing them snowballs. Man, and then you try to, if you had that wet snow, you really pack it. Put the heat from your hand in and melt it and throw like an ice brick. Oh my goodness.
Love toast.
Oh my God.
Anything and everything.
Oh, like you go to, and as you walk down the street, you cross the street, like say between 121st Street, you cross 121st Street. Well, the wind is coming down that street. So that one is not as bad as 120.
See what's happening?
Of course, you know there's a
What's happening? I brought you just this. I can be back at the middle. You don't need this. Alone and that brother right there.
Where's the third one? You see this in an action.
What's that?
No show, Lisa.
Oh, no, yeah. No show.
Wait, you done turned white on it, brother?
Y'all know the grab your glass.
So,
while we take the break,
will they be understanding that
it's part of our meditation.
be some kind of class?
Drink your water.
I'm sorry, lady. I thought she was coming this afternoon.
Drink your water, but first,
Yes,
take your
But you guys,
Drink your breath and get some water. Take your breath.
you ain't class.
Drink.
I don't have
What should I say?
That's a
Breathe.
he's on the thumb drive.
No, that was a jump drive. I had a jump drive right there.
Now grab your cup full of water.
Put it up.
Yeah, I put it back in. Put that water.
I put it back in the bin.
Twist the cap full of that water.
Who's collecting money? No, he'll take it. Yeah, he'll take it.
I'm getting it now.
You know what? Oh, or it's not.
What should I say? Live
Well, if you heard us, why you
and drink.
Because y'all were in the conversation.
Move your body and drink some water. Move your body and drink some water.
So,
Move your body and drink some water.
what I'm asking is
Drink.
some
Or should we say, move. Drink.
actually
Man,
submit changes.
man,
Put everybody on
Now
the
lift
same
your cup
page.
and your
Looking at that page. Ain't debating.
you know,
Well, I
my mom
didn't
had a
think
stroke.
that way. Okay, well,
About
let's
a year
set up
ago.
let's hear you just start making this on okay, so is this what my
Look
is?
out for her.
Or should I say,
That's what I'm doing.
pray.
I'm trying to do it without a motor and this to have the
Now take your breath
to
in.
need that was before we get to you. Because we got to flare up and just when you going over
Move your body, drink some
by
water.
the time we get to you, we should be
Raise your glass and toast your ancestors.
so you don't have to go back and say, well, wait a minute. You no, you need to know.
They help remember.
No, I know you explained to me. Okay.
Move.
And then a rule.
Drink after your houses. Get
That's
those
what I do
people
it
in
this
the
way.
bag. Take your breath.
We should be looking at that.
More.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So if we can, we all get together somehow. Or something like that. Then we go to the mountains. I'm saying it's gone. Go into the crystal. Yeah, they shipped me out of open house.
Drink your water.
That's my brother.
Drink.
That's why I said that. And that has come up. So we have to adjust with them because the question is, are they in the boat? And yeah, they're in the boat. But then if they're in the boat, then how can they be in the boat? We got to talk these things out. Yeah, we got to get something out there. We put him out in the boat and then bring him back in when we come back.
Days in between.
Oh, Mama Rhoda! Hell more! They didn't say so. He's right there. Thank you. Bonotchi.
That's when
Thanking you boys to be living up to experience. Every time I passed the bookstore, I didn't have no idea something would happen. In Japan, I would go find a drum, sit down by the water, and start playing. Well, that's what I used to see. She needed a drum for her act. She was Chiquita. So I applied for the job. And she said, so-and-so. I said, well, look, lady, I don't know what you're doing, so I had to come up with a little picture and see what I got over to Japan by being surrounded by 15 white boys. Got upset because I told my brother that the cue ball on the table was not as important as the 8-ball black ball. So he got real free. Went and got his boys. And I told the other black soldiers to stay out of this because it was just more than water. They would take a shot. They surrounded me, and of course I did the Harlem, Detroit thing. Focused on the leader. Did not say anything. He could feel that, okay, the first one that moves, you gone. That's it. Next thing I know, they shipped me out and sent me over to Japan. I was studying nutrient social. I was like you said, you died to get all these different. Yeah, I was over there. Papa Son asked me. I was asking him about the bonsai tree, and he asked me. He looked at me and said, "Don't you know who you are?" And I went like, "What the hell you mean?" So that night I went back and started reading the books that I got from 120 Christians. And he gave me the ones. Gee, that was 1960. Right. 1960. So what can I say? I know, that's why I say, what can I say? Because you just can't say anything in see, like Brother Bonotchi said, in this room here, he was smacking it. Oh, no, I know the Christians hear that. Some of them would say, "Sir, what's wrong with you? Why are you smacking me?" Now, there's a lot of them in here. What the fuck? Bam! He hit you right back. And some of them in here that is not going to happen. They want to question your understanding of Jesus. Why are you doing this? Oh no! We're in the Donald Trump. And that means when I say something, your ass better respond the way I want you to. You heard what they let out today. They killed 2 dudes that testified yesterday. And that's just the 2 at the top. And the candidate said, okay, well, we'll just bring them back to the Pentagon. Oh.
It's going to be very nice when you get his deal.
Huh?
It's going to be very nice when you get his deal.
Oh, come on. You don't know. You know who he is. Come on.
But as I say, nobody is invincible.
This is my understanding. This is my personal understanding. His boys are going to protect him. That's what it's about. We have to start protecting our person that stands up and says, whatever. We got to protect them. That's all. And my question is, like, we're right here in this community. No one that's stood up and did a whole bunch of stuff, did stuff on both sides with it. When some women were in trouble, they would go to no more. And he would go over there and protect him, protect him. A lot of other things that we right there. And then a lot of us became conscious because of the slide presentation. But when the time came for us to protect him, that was my understanding.
To me, we don't put ourselves in a position to protect him.
Oh, yeah, we do.
We don't,
We put ourselves in position. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
The whole
We
fact
should.
is, they will come at you economically. So they're protecting you economically. So if they lose their job, we can support them.
We didn't do nothing. We didn't do that. Yes, we are.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are.
No,
We
we're
were
not.
in the
Because we don't have the mindset
position.
to do it.
We were in the position to protect people. We were in the position to do that.
Protect them politically.
No, economically, politically, socially. Come on now.
I question economically because we don't protect ourselves economically.
He was working for APDS.
It really doesn't matter. If he loses his J.O.B., what is he going to do? You have to
He did lose his J.O.B.
So you have to be able to support him.
Yes, we should have been able to do that.
Right. So you don't have consciousness in order to do that.
We didn't.
Right. You didn't do that.
Right.
So the whole fact that there's a gap in your mindset.
No.
There's a gap.
It's not a gap. That was intentional. We decided not to.
Why?
Why did we decide not to? I don't know. I have to ask Jerry and Marie. Because they could. They all it took was the stroke of a pen. Now, I worked at the Buckeye Boys Race 37 years. I did some racing. Okay? And they want to keep you going. But if you got a group of people behind you, you got a group of people behind, and they do something, and they come to say something to you, but that group of people says, oh no, he ain't going to didn't this work when the fire department lady, what's the fire department lady who's got the art, Roots Gallery, remember her husband? They tried to fire him because of his hair. We all got together. And said, no, you're not going to do that. And he didn't fire her. Same thing with her. She had to sue the fire department. And they were going to get her. We all got together and they said, oh, okay. So we are doing it. But I don't know why we didn't do it in this is my dilemma. But he was there and everybody was there. You remember the Hall of Respect? Ohio and that building across the street from that church. Hall of Respect. And down there in the basement of that is Charles Nettle, which is now Dakota. Him and Marie and all them, they had the pictures of all the people we were talking about on the wall. And that was where the father was. That thing went, that was one of the places Bruce Kwame, after we did the final, came out, there was gangs was outside waiting for fighters, and did. So, but we fought back and stuff, you know. So, I don't know why Some people are saying because the Adam Board was involved and the Adam Board said this is the criteria A, B, C, and D, right? For instance, out there in the ranch, at the Buckeye Ranch and in the community, I was one person that was doing art third. Because of the drawing, some of the other art stuff that we do, right? When it came time to legitimize art therapy in the social work area, it was going to grandfather us all in. And I didn't really grandfather in. Now, I don't know if that was a dumb mistake or what. But what it did was I was going to say, like, if I get grandfathered in, then I'll come up under y'all's banner, and y'all can tell me what the criteria is. So in that case, I chose not to. But in Noah's case, he was always talking. I mean, he could talk to the folks that other folks couldn't talk to because he's been there with that stuff. So they say, I don't want to talk to y'all. Y'all talking that good stuff, but they talking to me. But at the same time, I think he got some press. You know what I'm saying? There are people we can say this. There are, and I think we would do it. But we didn't. I feel bad about it.
I guess the whole thing is, I don't see structure.
Oh my goodness. APDS under Mariba had a very good structure. They well structured. Thank you. Thank you. That's why it's still here. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Oh, it was. I think we're in the area of imagery model. Okay, is the imagery with no is that the same imagery of APDS now? And I would say one of the major shifts was it went to the church. This is my own personal assessment. Because that's where I'm going to support people who are church minded. I'm going to support that. If you're Muslim minded or something, well, if you're in, but you know, we'll get some of that. Because when I'm looking around at all the things now, that's what I'm seeing. Even this millennium school, by knowing it's attached to Timothy Clark's piece, it gives it a certain amount in our black community. It gives it a certain amount of. I think what I'm trying to say is the black power, the black understanding of the black national state is still a stepchild in black identification, right? And as long as you're associated with. I think that's fine. I'm on a mountain because I'm going to church tomorrow. I have to do a thing tomorrow talking about the black history, which I call world history. I had to do that as a drummer. They call me in to do that all the time. And I got to keep trying to remember that I'm still trying to be in this vein and not in the vein, you know, trying to understand all that. But yeah, I would say that would be one of the major things that helped some of our cuties she hit me. Oh, I didn't do that. Oh, thank you.
Hi, sir. How you doing?
Okay. So, the restroom. Oh, go out, make a right, go to the end of the hall, make another right, and then just let it go. So, brother, This is exciting. We haven't had this many climber people in the room in a while. So thank you very much. Right? Thank you very much.
God did it.
Yeah.
They moved this over there.
Oh, I don't know where they put it. Oh, they put it over there. It's over where you're sitting. It'd be to your right in the back. It was over here to your no. It'd be to your left in the back. It was to your right over the wall. They're getting ready to go in a minute. Mama Mona and them are going to call us up. We're going to have our guests go first, right? Because he's a vegetarian.
I am a fooditarian. I'm not against vegetables at all.
I'm messing like that.
But I'm not the only vegetable. I told a rumor lie that I
stopped talking.
I was putting myself in jeopardy. I'm staying at his house.
Yeah, I know. And then you got like you start attacking.
I'm changing my safety. I'm having to sleep out.
And then you reached the point where you looked at it and you said, "Oh hell, no!" And you went right back.
Neither one wanted to argue. I'm like, don't argue.
But I was glad to hear something about that, man, because that's something I have been having trouble with. How is it that we go through 400 years of slavery, eating everything that came across the table, built the strongest nation the world has ever seen, and yet now y'all gonna tell me this food ain't no good for me?
Could you back up a second? Yeah. When you said built the strongest nation the world has ever seen, what were you talking about?
The United States.
Oh no, I have to disagree with that.
It's common
I know, but please let me disagree. Okay, now we're gonna have to figure something out what to deal with. Okay. Because I think that was one of the things we learned, that everybody in this room, you question what you see or what you hear, because it doesn't fit into your understanding of what is the greatest world, the greatest nation we've ever seen. So what we were learning, what I understand, is a lot of these things not even existing. First, we had defined them, so all the other music is just using it to its advantage and saying it's the greatest nation that we've watched, and that's why I have to understand how I'm accepting it, because I'm these United States with the colors that went
So when you started to
and then they adopted that, all the other stuff, all the time. So, if you are that rich, why haven't you got your own damn son? So almost all the stuff, even the birds, so that's the only reason why I'm saying that.
Brother Tony, I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. But just using the parlance of conversation language to highlight a point.
I'm learning that when I speak to the young people about the past being down and all these other things, when I say the greatest nation, if I keep planting that seed that this one is the greatest nation, they grow that seed. Okay, so I have to plant that seed. That's all I'm doing.
For me, as white folks claim the greatest
I don't
nation,
even call it.
as white folks claim the greatest nation to ever be.
Okay, I don't even call them white folks. I go to either the parent or the grandparent, which would be the Aryans, the northern folks, which they call themselves white. We the Germans and the Anglo-Saxons, everybody else is that they either submit to them or they will keep jacking it. the Irish, the Italians, we were able to turn white data. They do not see them as being a part of so when they say the great, that's when you're right. They're talking about just that group up here in the side. They are not talking about the so that's why I said that. So thank you for letting me say that because my young talking to young brothers right now, they're still trying to figure out why President
Brother Bonotchi.
and then they take care of that's the only reason why I say shock jock. Well, what did the shock jock was Jewish? What did he say? Do you listen to Rush? No, not Rush. Yeah, I listen to Rush. Do you? Not about Rush. The shock jock. The shock jock is not
But they all kind of no to the same category.
Rush. That's the information that the upper intelligence and old money lets out to let the new money know get your ass. That's what his job is. That's his job. He represents oil, steel, the plastic, that stuff. The new money.com. They're out there with their own money, so they're pretty much they're not
So direction. Under no direction.
No, they got their own direction. Right. Yeah, they're so what the thing is to get them in line. Old money, so old money can say, okay. And they will take that's where the term Black Lives Matter, that's where all these terms they're fighting each other. They fight each other. And everybody else goes, yes, ma'am.
Can I get
Brother Kwame going to eat?
No, not yet. Bonotchi's doing a mini interview.
Oh, good.
Hi, guys.
Hello?
Yeah, that's all.
Amen.
We're going to eat as soon. Brother Bonotchi is doing a small interview on Hatim's radio. As soon as we finish that, we'll go ahead and have lunch.
It's TV too, isn't it?
I don't know.
It's called Gye-Nyame Journey Media.
Oh, he's done.
Thank you.
Okay,
Tsunamis Journey Media.
your interview is complete, or what you're going to do. So you can come on at what?
So, Antonio. Yeah. Wait, let me see what they Mama. What's she saying something to her?
No, free. That must be free.
Everybody, I think, has paid.
Yes.
Was it
Everyone
paid?
is
No, I haven't
paid.
paid.
We're good.
Oh, Mama Lona.
That's right. I mean, you're the one who knows how to do that best of me, huh?
He wants to.
No, I haven't paid.
Oh, so as Keith,
All right, family, we out.